Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining our weekly live stream. Today is Mission Control AI War Room. We're inside the AI War Room. We're going to be analyzing our AI tool across several hundred different projects to answer any questions you might have, to not only share my opinion, but more importantly, what does data show and what is some of the quantitative um, information show that we've gathered from having helped so many organizations throughout the world. We're going to dive into our AI tool. We're going to prompt it using your questions. We're going to dive into all the information we have on implementations we've been involved with. So this should be a really interesting conversation. A lot unlike or very different from what most sessions look like if you've ever joined these live streams. So not only do I not have a guest here today, I guess technically I do have a guest. It's our AI tool, our AI agent that I'm going to be prompting here with you here in real time to dive into some of the data that we've captured here on a number of different projects across the world. So my name is 𝗟𝗓𝗦𝗡. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent and tech agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformations. I'm also part of 𝗪𝗘𝗏, which is an ERP and IT staffing company. If you're looking for internal contract to hire or W-2 talent to support your IT or ERP project needs, 𝗪𝗘𝗏 can help with that. So you can reach out to me in either case, whether you're looking for consulting and or staffing help for your project. Today is a part of our weekly live stream series. We're going to edit this. We'll add additional content to it once we're done here today, and we'll make it a formal part of our Transformation Ground Control podcast series. It's a weekly podcast that's released every Wednesday with new episodes. You can go to transformationgroundcontrol.com to find that podcast if there's past episodes you'd like to check out as well. So we've got about 260 plus episodes over the last 5 years, so be sure to check it out. We're streaming to LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, X, and TikTok. So thank you for joining wherever you're joining from here today. Love having you here today, and thank you for being here. We're going to take audience questions here today. In fact, you are a key part of this show. Without you asking questions, this show will be quite the disaster. So I thank you in advance for helping make sure it's not a disaster here today. And the way you can help the most is by submitting just any questions you have about ERP and digital transformation projects. So imagine this, if you could tap into the knowledge base of hundreds or over 1,000 different ERP initiatives and transformation projects, what question would you ask? What information would you want to gather from that data? And the beauty of our AI tool, this is a tool we have that's called Mission Control AI. It's a tool that we rolled out close to a year ago now. And we've spent the last year not only piloting it with current clients, but then we've also been training the AI tool with all of our past artifacts. So we went through and scrubbed and pulled 8 years worth of projects. There's several hundred different projects, 400 plus active projects. Plus, in addition to that, we have several hundred, I think it's about 800 different organizations where we've had various conversations with them. Maybe they didn't become a paying client or we weren't involved with them longer term, but we did capture information about those organizations as it relates to their digital transformations and the struggles they were facing, the organizational and operational changes they were going through. So we've got tons and tons of data that is in this model, and it's I'll be honest, it's super addictive. I find myself constantly going into it to further understand and mine the data. And your job here today is to ask me questions that you want me to prompt the AI tool in real time, and I'm going to pull it up here in real time. I'm going to actually cut and paste it into a Word document just so I don't show you all the client sensitive information that's in the AI tool. But you'll be able to see exactly what I prompt, and you'll be able to see the exact response. And we're going to redact all the responses to exclude specific client names. But if there's general information you want to know about digital transformations, let me know and I will prompt it. The other cool thing about this data is that it involves all various types of projects throughout the entire life cycle. So some clients, we get involved with them from the very beginning. We'll help beginning with the digital strategy and the software selection, and then we'll eventually help them through the implementation. Other clients hire us after they've already selected the software. They say, hey, we've picked software vendor A, B, or C, and now we want your help implementing, in which case we will do that. And then there's other cases where it's a project recovery or an expert witness case where there's a failure at hand or a lawsuit. And those in some ways are really good for the AI tool because the data and they're so rich with mistakes and correlations and things that cause the failure that we're able to mine that for a lot of really good lessons learned. And we're actually also in the process of loading our entire methodology into the tool set. That part's not done yet, but our entire methodology will reside in this AI tool set. that will then take all of our client experience, combine it with our proprietary methodology, combined with our thought leadership, put that all together, and you've got mission control AI that gives you a good understanding of what goes on with these projects. The other cool thing with the data set is that the data spans all different types of technologies. So we've got everything in here from big SAP S/4HANA implementations that have failed to greenfield from start to finish SAP implementations or tier 1 implementations. We also have implementations for tier 2 providers, Microsoft D365, epicor, Infor, Acumatica, et cetera. We've also got HCM and CRM implementations in here, Workday, Salesforce, all the vendors you can imagine. We have experience with not only evaluating and selecting software, but also helping implement those solutions, which is really cool because now we've got data that shows what was promised in the sales cycle versus what was actually delivered and what were the actual results. So lots of really good information we can get from this. So be thinking of the questions you want to ask. If you could tap into these several hundred project artifacts without getting detailed about the specific client names, what would you want to know? So that's your job, is to think of prompts. And I'm gonna get us started here with a couple here in a minute. But in the meantime, if you don't mind dropping in the chat, where in the world are you joining from? What city and country are you in? I'd love to hear your thoughts on where you are, just so we understand the global community here today. And we also have a couple people that have already chimed in. Brittany on LinkedIn says, good morning. Hello, Brittany. Thank you for being here. And Darian on LinkedIn says, good morning. So thank you both for being here. And let me know, everyone else, where in the world are you joining from? I'm in Denver, Colorado today, which is where our headquarters is. So thanks for being here. So let me show you real quickly what we're dealing with here. And you'll have to bear with me because a lot of what we're doing here it's all real time. It's live, obviously. But you're going to have to bear with me as I do prompting and multitasking, which I'm really not good at. I'm good at some things, but one thing I'm not good at is multitasking. So you'll have to bear with me. And I do apologize in advance for that. But I'm going to share with you real quickly my screen here, and I will show you what I have in mind here. So let me share my screen here, and I'll show you what I think I'm going to show you. Maybe not. See, already I'm having trouble. Yep, I'm sharing an endless screen. So I'm going to open this on the new tab here. Bear with me. So I'm going to show you a little bit about what this tool is at a high level to start, and then I'll dive into it. I'll show you the prompt here in just a second. But if you go to our website, you will see some really some good information here about the tool. And here it is. Okay, so here's a little bit about the tool itself. So this is Mission Control AI. This is something you can find on our website. Essentially, what it is, it's a tool. It's a proprietary tool set we use that captures all of our digital transformation projects in an AI tool. So it's everything from, you can see here, requirements gathering, process mapping, current state and future state, system fit gap analysis, change impacts from a change management perspective, strategy and planning, midstream decisions, testing and validation. Basically, for all of our current active projects right now, and there's about 25 of them, I think, right now that are using this tool actively with projects. Every single meeting, every single deliverable, every single work in progress, every single client input into the process, all the artifacts, all the meetings, all the transcripts, the videos from every single meeting is getting into this tool set. And the level of depth that you can capture is pretty amazing. If you think about every single conversation that happens, every single decision that's made, now you've got a record of it, and it's no one's going to forget because it's well documented, even if someone didn't write it down. And I apologize, I'm showing you the wrong screen here. I went back to the wrong screen. So if you go to this here, you can see what I was just mentioning, the different tools here in terms of fit gap analysis and whatnot. In terms of why it actually works, the reason we started doing is, first of all, just to get better information and to mine the data that we have, because we knew we were sitting on a landmine of data, or a gold mine of data, not a landmine, a gold mine of data in terms of client data and results and software comparisons, strengths and weaknesses of different systems as we're deploying it and implementing it. So we knew we were sitting on this gold mine of info, but we didn't know what to do with it until we had this tool come along and develop this with the company we partner with on it. And the cool thing is that it works throughout all the different phases of the project, and it allows it to be objective and also trained by our methodology and by our philosophy to independent tech agnostic consulting. So we have a unique advantage here because not only are we working across industry, across the world, we're also working with different platforms, different systems, and different implementations, and we're capturing real-time information about it. And the other good thing is now we can actually use that to help clients instead of other firms that might specialize in one system that are also using an AI tool. They're still going to be focused solely on the technology for their AI usage, whereas we're looking at the entire program, including the operational and organizational stuff. But then the other part of it too is we are capturing objective information that we can now share with clients. So if you follow any of our thought leadership, we're not afraid to tell the truth as far as what actually happens in these projects and expose the risks and the things that decision makers and leaders need to know. And so having the data now to back it and having the objectivity combined with the data and the thought leadership and the methodology is something that's extremely powerful. And we're still, in the final stages of loading more and more of our historic client data into it. But we've already got, I think, about 250 already loaded in. 250 organizations are represented in some way in this data set, but we've got over 1,000 total. So there's a lot more to go, but we're focused on the bigger ones first, the ones that have the most data. So anyway, that's a little bit about the tool itself. In just a moment, I'll pull up a prompt here that we'll get into, and I'll see what questions you have. But in the meantime, I want to say hello to some additional people here online. Cassiana from Romania, thank you for being here today. Basile from the UK, thanks for being here today. And Sanjay on LinkedIn, thank you for being here today. So let me know what questions you have. If you want to dig into an AI tool, if you could dig into an AI tool to see historic information and patterns, that sort of thing, now is your time and now is your opportunity. So feel free to jump in with any questions you have. So the first thing I want to do here today is I'm going to show you the first prompt, and this is just a prompt that I did on my own just because I was curious more than anything. And you'll see here a document. I just cut and paste this into a Word document, the exact prompt I used, as well as the results from it. And the reason I do this again is because I don't want to dig around in there and poke around and have you have to watch me prompt it. And I also don't want to reveal client information if it comes up in the response. So I have a way I'm going to prompt it though to avoid that, hopefully. But you can see right here, this is the prompt I put in right before going live here in this discussion. I said, without mentioning client names, please tell me the 5 risks force ranked across all of our clients, knowledge spaces, and project folders. Base this on all active and historic client project artifacts. So I'm basically prompting it to go through not just our current clients, but every client that we've ever been involved with that we have documentation artifacts on, help us force rank in terms of frequency and severity of some of the risks here. You can see the number 1 is inadequate organizational change management. And then it gives you, kind of a summary of why that is. The cool thing about this tool too is if I were in the tool itself, it actually gives you citations, or it'll give you documents or artifacts it'll point to give you examples. The other cool thing, just like ChatGPT or any other AI tool that you're used to conversationally, I can then go in and say, well, please elaborate on this, or tell me which specific clients are having this particular issue, or the biggest or the most reflective of this issue. Or I could, as a leader within third stage, I can also ask it, tell me every single client that has a change management issue right now and summarize for me what those change management issues are. I'm pretty sure that if I did do that, it's going to give me every single client in the database. I don't think it would pull out one that says, there's certain ones that don't have change management issues. But you can see here the severity and the frequency is what it's based on. It gives you a summary here. When I prompt it without asking it to mask client information, it'll actually give me a summary of some examples of what clients are experiencing and what the challenges are. I did the same prompt, not asking it to keep clients sensitive or confidential, and it did show me a list of some examples of clients that are having the biggest issues in these areas. So you can see number 2 is resource constraints, team fatigue, and SI turnover, vendor and SI turnover. So, having internal resource constraints, the SI has people that are churning and getting replaced or leaving the project. And then the team's getting tired. And this is a really interesting one. And I think this is the reality of where a lot of organizations are. I don't know, if I were to do this ranking myself, just based on qualitative experience and what's in my head, I don't think I would have put this one so high. So it's interesting to see that this tool did, because that tells me it sees something that I don't and that our team maybe doesn't. And which is really cool, because I've always said, no matter how smart I think I am, or our team, or any other of you listening, they're consultants, none of us have all the answers. Even when we put a small team together for our clients, whether it's 3 or 4 or 5, 10 people, whatever it is, you're not going to know everything that there is to know that you need to know about the complexity of managing these projects. And that's part of why they fail, is because it's so hard to keep track of all these moving parts and pieces and to see all the risks as they transpire. And for me personally, this is an example of one where I didn't realize how big of a problem this was until, via a separate prompt that I did yesterday or earlier this week. I found that as I dug into it, I saw how pervasive it was across our clients. So that helps me understand what's going on, the pulse of every single client we have, which is awesome too, because I can't obviously be in every meeting, and I'm not in every meeting or status meeting or whatnot. So I can go in now and see and apply my knowledge and input across projects now without having to be in every single room or every single meeting. So that is another way to scale our knowledge across clients. And then number 3 on the list of the risk here is weak project governance, RAID discipline, and risk management immaturity. So this overall governance, project governance, not having the right controls in place, not identifying the actions, the risks, the actions, and decisions that need to be made. And so that is an interesting one. And so it even, in this case, it gives us an example of one client where they've got 263 overdue or outdated RAID items and a risk register with only 3 active risks across the program, with 2,000 plus requirements and 1,100 plus open issues. So that's a good example of a red flag. And that's the first thing I ask as a leader is, whoa, hold on. How is one of our clients doing this? Chances are pretty high, and I'm pretty sure I know which one this is, that it's one that we came in to recover. So a lot of times you'll see that this project is a mess and they've hired us to come in and clean it up. But at least now I can look at this and say, okay, as we go in, one of the first things we have to do is identify what the risks are and make some meaningful progress on that, because this client hasn't done that yet in this example. And of course, I can ask it to tell me, elaborate on point number 3, client by client amongst our active clients, and it'll tell me what exactly I need to know about that. Data migration, complexity, quality, and governance gaps. That's another one. So data is a big issue, obviously, across different projects here. And then number 5 is scope creep, budget timeline overruns, and unrealistic planning. That kind of ties back, or it very much ties back to number 3. So there's a bit of overlap there, but that's another one that makes a lot of sense. But for me, again, going back to number 2, I wouldn't have put this as number 2 in my top 10 ranking. I might have put it like number 4, 5, 6, somewhere in there. But seeing that is such a high frequency and the severity being so critical, that makes me wonder now, what else do we need to do to help clients? Or do we need to recast some plans? Are there plans that are still unrealistic? All that sort of stuff. So it's a good early warning indicator. And then, of course, when we get down here, we can see some of the summary of how there's so much interrelation between it. And I'm just reading a note here, gaps to note, and this is the first time I'm seeing this part, so I'm learning with you real time. Formal risk quantification is sparse across most engagements, and post-go-live retrospective data is limited, meaning lessons learned may not fully be captioned in the current artifact database, or the current artifact database. So that's an important point, and something that's another reason why we're continuing to add more data to the tool as well. So anyway, that's my first prompt, the first one I tried. I've also been poking around here asking, to compare different systems. What if I want to compare SAP and Oracle? What are the biggest strengths and weaknesses I should know about? It'll go across every single SAP and Oracle implementation, as well as every single SAP and Oracle comparison that we've done. And it'll pull and quantify and summarize data as it relates to that. So there's a lot of different ways you can use this, and really interested to hear what you all think and what questions you have. So I'm going to actually, before let's see if I can copy this comment here. Resistance. This is from Vasile on LinkedIn. Vasile says, resistance to change, is it mainly because the change is forced rather than involving the stakeholder to participate in the process? So I'm going to try and prompt the tool in a way that mirrors what you just said. So I'm just going to say, without mentioning client names, Unfortunately, my streaming software won't let me cut and paste, which would be ideal. I'll say, without mentioning client names, help me understand if resistance to change is mainly because change is forced. Oh, shoot, I lost it. Rather than involving the stakeholder to participate in the process. Okay, so I'm prompting it now. It usually takes about 60 seconds for it to pull up a question here or pull up the response because it's going to dig through a bunch of stuff. And I just loaded a ton of stuff last night. And so I think a lot of it's still processing. So it ends up taking a little bit longer, but actually it's already responding. So never mind. It's going to be fast apparently. So maybe it did process all the stuff I loaded already. While we're pulling that up, I want to say hello to a few other people here. Lean on LinkedIn says hello from the Netherlands. Thanks for being here. Someone on LinkedIn, I don't see the name, says hi, Eric from Pune, India. Thank you for being here today. And then we've got another question that came in that we'll pull up here in a minute. All right, so I'm going to pull up the prompt again. This is essentially how I prompted it. You heard what I put in. I put in a little bit different. So I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to show you what it tells me here. And first, I'm going to make sure it doesn't mention any clients here. Yes. Okay. It looks clear. Yeah. It's giving me examples, but not client names, which is perfect. All right. So I'm going to go in now to the window. Where is it? All right. There we go. So here's what we've got. This is the previous prompts. Bear with me. All right. So the new answer here, the new prompt is what you see at the bottom of your screen here. I'm just going to go to a new page and I'll drop this in. Okay. So this is a response to the question here of resistance to change. Is it mainly because the change is forced rather than involving the stakeholder to participate? Based on the patterns across your engagements, the answer is yes. Resistance is highly tied to change being posed top-down without meaningful stakeholder participation. Here's what the data shows. So it does say top-down forced change is a root cause. Little inclusion of people. One organization highlights a culture that questions decisions, has a low risk appetite. Another operates as a top-down product-first organization with silos. In one case, there's effectively no change management and roles and responsibilities weren't resolved. And then another information wasn't reaching lower level employees with a readiness score of 3 out of 10. And this is really cool too, because we uploaded tons of organizational readiness assessments that we'd done across a few hundred of those clients. And now we've got metrics where we can compare new clients against other benchmarks and averages to show how do you compare to other companies that are going through the similar journey. If you're outperforming or in the upper quartile, you're obviously in a better position than if you're at an average or below average level. So it's interesting that they're pulling in some data. If I further prompt this, it'll give me more data too. If I want to say, show me how this affects organizational readiness scores or show me how clients compare to one another across organizational readiness, that's another part of it. So stakeholder participation is the antidote. So it says that the data consistently shows that when organizations do involve stakeholders, resistance drops. And when they don't, it spikes. I mean, it's in a lot of ways common sense. The question itself, I think, is somewhat of a, I don't want to say it was rhetorical or hypothetical or what's the word I'm looking for? The question that's there's an obvious answer to it, but you're not really asking it for an answer. I'm drawing a blank on that word. Anyway, the point being that I think rhetorical. I think the question is somewhat rhetorical in some ways because I think a lot of us would probably say, yeah, it probably is why there's resistance to change. But now being able to have data to back it to show that there's a correlation, there's an impact of not having a stakeholder involvement is a big part of this. So they give some examples of one client wants to involve people from the start rather than pushing change on them in the end, whereas before the change was managed reactively or by accident. This is why I love working with clients that have already failed or struggled with their transformations at one point because they know they've got the battle wounds and the scars to show for it, and they know what the price of not doing it right is, rather than having someone come in and tell them what could go wrong. They've actually experienced it, which is different. Critical success factors focus on inclusive governance, creating urgency, guiding coalition, developing vision and strategy, et cetera, et cetera. And then the change framework maps transition requirements, motivation, capability, participation, clarity, time to adapt, emotional support. So it even will give you, if I want to say now, tell me then how I can overcome resistance to change or build more of a, a stakeholder driven change plan. It'll give me recommendations based on what's worked at other clients and also based on our methodology that we use with our clients. So the type of resistance at play, it talks about intentional resistance and unintentional resistance. And this is based on some of our thought leadership that we published and trained the tool with. If you see these books behind me over here, we've actually trained the tool with my books, with all of our thought leadership webinars, mastermind series that we've done with CIOs. A lot of stuff that you don't find on our YouTube channel. This is all stuff that we do internally that's being captured here. So the bottom line is the pattern is clear. Resistance is less about people rejecting change itself and more about not being part of shaping it. So that's a great prompt, and I appreciate Vasile you asking that, because that's a great example of how this tool can be used. And of course, from here we can dig in and get more answers. Tell me, give me a methodology or give me a framework, give me a template that I can use to start managing this with a client. And that's something we do with our clients there regularly. So we've got a few more examples here. James is joining on LinkedIn. James says, "Good morning from New Jersey. Are you doing this via Copilot? I missed the beginning of the war room." No, this is not Copilot. This is our proprietary mission control AI tool set. It's programmed with all of our proprietary client data from 400 plus different client engagements. So we've got all the artifacts, all the meeting notes and outputs and deliverables and work in progress and requirements analysis. Everything we've done for all these different clients have been loaded in and programmed into this proprietary tool set. So it's giving us information that you're not going to find on Copilot, because Copilot will give you, for example, you could go to Copilot and get a summary of my YouTube channel. I mean, according to my YouTube channel, what are the top 10 reasons why projects fail, or what are the top risks, or what are the best systems in the market, whatever you want. But that's all based on public high-level information. This is based on detailed client data information. So it's more of a granular, detailed view of the world. So good question. It's not Copilot. You won't find this in any other tool set, because it's not just about AI and conversational AI. It's about the data that's in it. And that's the real advantage we have as an independent tech agnostic company that has several hundred different clients. So that combination of thought leadership, broad clients across different platforms, and our experience implementing all these different systems just gives us a knowledge base that most won't have. Themba from South Africa on YouTube says hello. James on LinkedIn says very cool. Vasile says at number 2, I suggest a modular implementation strategy. I really love the Frappy ERP/ERP Next and other Frapp-based management systems. And I apologize, I always forget how to pronounce the word, if it's Frapp or Frappy. I know I mess it up half the time, so I always hedge. So good stuff there. Here's another question from Sanjay on LinkedIn. Sanjay says, do you think implementing AI in SAP projects is just a technical enhancement or is a transformation initiative? It unfortunately oftentimes ends up becoming a transformation initiative or being limited to a transformation initiative. But with Joule and some of the other AI tools that SAP has developed, it should be it's usually treated as a technical initiative, but it should be treated as a transformation initiative is what I meant to say. So the opposite of what I just said is what I meant. I think too often companies are thinking about, let's just throw in AI and hope for the best without necessarily having a good vision or understanding of what it is they're looking for. So good question there. So let me know what other prompts you want to use. I'm actually going to go steal some of my own here that I've been doing over the last several days and weeks of just being fairly obsessed with this tool set. So let me see here. Here's one that's not. Let me say this. Please recreate the list while hiding client names. Okay. So I have a prompt here that I really like. but it has a bunch of client stuff in it I have to take out. So this is the top 10. Yes. Sorry, it's creating it now. I can't read my prompt while it's creating it here. All right, here it is. So this is the top 10 SAP S/4HANA implementation risks based on our client evidence. So this is where it gets cool because, some might say that I'm guilty of bashing vendors at times, particularly SAP, and I am critical of vendors, especially SAP at times. But I do understand the value of the software, and a lot of our clients are implementing it. In fact, most of our clients are. If I had to pick one vendor that's the most commonly implemented amongst our clients, it's SAP. So I have sort of a love-hate relationship with SAP as a company and as a tool set. But the reason why I pick on it is because I think in the industry there's this tendency to be very vendor biased, to say, if I'm in the SAP community or the Oracle community or the D365 community, there's a part of me that thinks that vendor can do no wrong, that is the silver bullet that the industry needs. And that's a good thing in some ways, because that's why you are probably a great representative of that vendor. But what it does is it unintentionally creates a blind spot amongst clients, which is why we're always trying to call out these blind spots and say, hey, S/4HANA is cool, but there's also some risk here. Not to tell you not to buy it or implement it. Absolutely do it if it makes sense, but don't do it if it doesn't make sense. And even if you do it, understand what the risks are so you can mitigate them, not because we want to create doubt or fear, but because you should be a little bit scared, because there's a lot of things to be afraid of in these projects. So that's just some backdrop of since the question came up around SAP and AI in particular, I wanted to ask it this question. So I'll pull up the response it gave me here. And again, the prompt I said originally, the prompt was okay, hold on, that was a follow-up. So the original post or prompt was, what are the biggest problems, risks, or challenges with SAP S/4HANA implementations? Please force rank a top 10 list based on frequency and severity of the problems. And then it gave me a list that was kind of generic at first. So then I went in and said, what are the sources of the rankings? It went in and told me that a lot of it was coming from like SAP itself and outside information, which is something our tool will do. It'll still capture stuff and pull in info from that you could get in ChatGPT and whatnot. So there's a tiny sliver of that. But what I didn't want it just to be based on public information. I want it to be based on our experience. So then I had to ask it as a follow-up and said, base the ranking on third stages, client, project, workspace clients, and prospective clients. So it's looking at across all of our current clients, our historic clients, and even our prospective clients that we're talking to or we've talked to in the past. So that's what gave me the top 10 list. And then I had to go in and say, please recreate the list while hiding client names. So hopefully it did, because I didn't fully check it, but it looks like it did. Okay, so you can see number one, again, change management is the number one risk for SAP projects in particular. And by the way, if I run this for other vendors as well, it's probably going to be pretty similar. I haven't done a full comparison yet, but I did run it across like D365 implementations, and I think I did it for Infor implementations too, just because I was curious. And the lists were very similar. I think the rankings changed slightly, but for the most part, they were pretty consistent whether you're talking about SAP or anyone else. So this one, let me change my screen here. So this one, number one is organizational change management. So change management was the number one risk with these projects. It even said, one client had an executive support rating of 3 out of 10. Transformation agility for another was 3 out of 5. One had no readiness framework. And so that change management was the number one risk across those projects. Over-reliance on or problems with the system integrator. So you can see some of the comments here. It gives you some anecdotal examples. And if I want, I can say, give me more, let me see number 2 and expand, elaborate on that. Tell me more specific clients that have made comments or experienced this challenge. Unrealistic budget timeline expectations, scope creep, and poor scope management was another top risk for SAP projects. And then data migration complexity was number 5 on the list of top 5 SAP S/4HANA implementation risks. Then you had project governance, excessive customization, which is still a problem even in an S/4HANA environment, which is interesting because you kind of view that as ECC or a legacy ERP system problem, but it's still a problem with S/4HANA implementations as well. Insufficient testing, integration complexity, and then lack of internal resources. This one's interesting because lack of internal resources is a lot lower here than it was on the first prompt I did, which is to give me the top 5 risks across all clients and all projects. I believe that was number 2 or 3 on that list, but here with SAP projects, it's only number 10, which is interesting, although it also ties into number 2 and 3, I suppose. So there's a lot of overlap here. It's not as clean of a break between these categories as you might want for structured data or turning unstructured data into structured data like this. Oh, this is interesting too. What I love about this tool too is it'll point out its own biases or biases in the data or things that might skew the data. And this one is super interesting here because it says key takeaway, the system integrator problem ranks number 2, reflecting the fact that clients often engage third stage because their SA relationship has gone sideways, which I love that because that's telling you, okay, it's number 2, but that could be skewed because that's the whole reason they're hiring third stage is because they're having problems with their SI. Now, if we were to go and look at non-third stage clients, would it be the same top 10? I don't know. But I think what AI is suggesting here is that it probably wouldn't be. It might be a little bit lower. It still might be up there, but it may not be number 2 on the list. So super cool prompt there. So again, keep the prompts going. What else do you guys want to know? Oh, here we've got a few more coming in here. So Chris on LinkedIn says sometimes vendor bias is political or necessary due to business constraints. Very, very interesting there. And I tend to agree with you. And then here's a prompt I'm going to do. Okay, which I'm going to try and choose one of these 2 questions from Darian. Okay, here's a good one. I like this. I'll try this one first because this is one I'm really curious to see what it comes up with. So the question here is, I'm going to say without mentioning clients by name, tell me what gaps most commonly exist between executive perception and employee readiness. And what's cool, but what I like about this question, I'm curious to see what the response is because this is a very like a squishy question. There's not a lot of like data, like quantifiable data that you could use. So I'm curious to see, or maybe there is, and I just don't know about it. So I'm curious to see what happens here. No, I was wrong. It's actually giving me data. So I take that back. It's spitting out a response now, and I'll pull up the answer here in just a minute as soon as it's done. This is actually it's thinking a lot faster than it was yesterday when I was trying some of these. And I think it's because I had loaded just a ton, and our team was loading a ton of stuff yesterday, and it was still processing a lot of the stuff I put in there. Okay. So I feel like I can relate now better to software sales reps. They're trying to demo their product while they talk, and I'd be a terrible sales rep. Maybe that's why I didn't do that for a living, because I feel like I'm demoing software right now, and I feel like I'm not doing a good job because I can't multitask. Okay, so enough about me. Let's talk about digital transformation. All right, so here's the prompt I said was basically this question here from Darian. You can see it. I'll leave it up at the bottom just so you can see it. But my exact prompt was, without mentioning clients by name, tell me what gaps most commonly exist between executive perception and employee readiness. And so it goes on to say, number 1, strategic clarity. Its biggest weakness areas, scoring as low as a 3 out of 10. Employees can't articulate the organization's strategy, and leadership assumes alignment exists. So that's very interesting there. Give me a lot here about executive visibility and support is something that is a big gap. Below the surface resistance. The ORA, by the way, stands for Organizational Readiness Assessment. That's something we do on most of our clients, if not close to all of them, just to understand the points of resistance, not in a bad way, but as a way just to uncover the sources of resistance, things that don't cause that intentional sabotage of a project, but they're things that'll make people anxious and uncertain, and ultimately cause them to potentially resist the change. So that's what organizational readiness is. So it's giving us some qualitative summary of what some of the organizational readiness results show. If I ask it to, it could give me quantitative scores here to back this more, especially on that one because it mentioned the ORA. So below the surface resistance, accountability. So lack of accountability is something that can be a challenge. Communications reach. This is interesting. Internal communications often score 3 out of 10, with past communications failing to reach effective parties or explain the transformational approach. And executives assume information is flowing when it's not. Change fatigue versus urgency, and then job satisfaction as a barrier. So, this is interesting. This actually just jumped out at me as something that I don't know that I would have said this or thought this until I read it here. But now I'm reading it, it makes sense. So it's saying that high job satisfaction, as high as 8 out of 10, can actually increase resistance to change, a counterintuitive dynamic where executives read employee contentment as readiness when it actually signals comfort with the status quo. That is super telling. That's super insightful because it sort of matches a half-baked thought I've always had, which is, sometimes people that are, one thing I've said in other thought leadership is people that are really committed to and passionate about the vision of a company, like if it's a purpose-based organization, if like a faith-based organization or a nonprofit. A lot of times you see it in government as well, where people just want they want to help, like they want to help or be part of a movement or something that's helping other people. And anything that disrupts that or gets in the way of that, even if it's short term and even if it's for the best long term, it can create actually more resistance. We have noticed that with highly committed people. And we've also noticed it with highly educated people too. A lot of times the highly educated PhD engineering types, scientists types, sometimes they actually are harder to change than lower level people, simply because they're so smart and they need so much logic and explanation to make sense of the world. So anyway, this is really interesting. It sort of broadens my view of this a bit, which is how high job satisfaction can actually lead to more resistance to change. So very telling. See, this is why I love this tool, because it's teaching me stuff that it might have taken me another 10 years of doing this before I realized that is a true statement. And I actually totally agree with it now that I hear it out loud. So great prompt there. Thank you for that, Darian. So what else? What other prompts do you have for me? We've still got a few minutes left here, so I can keep digging into it. Let's see what we've got here. Okay, here's a comment from Chris. I'd say executives, this is Chris on LinkedIn. Chris says, I'd say executives don't often account for the amount of time employees will need to spend on the project. They don't hire additional product managers. When they do, they don't require or empower the product managers to require business outcome achievement or KPI alignment. It's very true. So that resource constraint ties back to not only the number of people you have, but the quality of people you have and the amount of authority or accountability they have on the project. Let me ask this other prompt here. This is another one from Darian. So thank you, Darian, for the really good questions here. She's our podcast co-host, so we can always rely on her to have good questions and to bail me out when the audience is being quiet here today. So I'm going to type in again without mentioning client names. Search the knowledge. I'll be a little more specific here. I'll say search the knowledge base. What I love about AI tools, I can have typos and it won't really care. Search the knowledge base to determine how new clients typically score on organizational readiness compared to past, I'll say past client benchmarks. Okay. So while this is searching here, it looks like this one might take a little longer. It's searching more stuff now. Probably because that's another squishy one, right? It's going deep, it looks like. So it's searching a bunch of stuff here. All right. Here's another one I might. Oh, here's an interesting one. I'm going to do this one next. Compare the top 5 SAP S/4HANA risks to D365 Oracle projects. What's different and what's consistent? I ran something similar to that the other day. It's super interesting. I actually did one thing I did do while I'm just buying time while this other output is working here. It's searching a lot of stuff. It's going through a lot of documents. I'm not sure what it's doing, but it's working. one thing I did is I said, show me the top functional differences between SAP and Oracle. I did it for D365 and Oracle, and it pulled out based on demo scores and implementation results. It showed what the actual functional gaps were, not just what vendors said they were in the RFP responses, which are usually overstated in terms of there not being much of a gap, but looking more specifically at the way employees that viewed a demo of a product, how did they rank the product, and also how did clients that have implemented the product rank the product? Those two pieces of data are a lot more important than what a vendor says in terms of their own self-assessment or whatever. This is really cool, this response. I'm going to pull up the Darian's question here again. So the question is, and it's spitting out the final result here, so it should just be another minute. I'll go ahead and share my screen and get this all set up and ready to go while it's doing its thing. And it's actually going to give us a lot of cool, looks like it's giving us a lot of quantitative info to go with this too. So I'm going to come down here. Here's the summary. Oh boy. Still, this is a massive response. Darian has opened a can of worms here, and AI is just going crazy, but we'll unpack it here real time. What's cool here too is, just to give you a preview, it's telling me how to benchmark new clients and what levels they can expect to be at in this. So let's go back to the, gosh, bear with me. What's going on? There we go. Okay. So go to the top here. All right. So the summary here, so the question again is, how do new clients typically score on organizational readiness compared to industry benchmarks? So here I'm saying that across 8 past organizational readiness, new clients, so this is just looking at new active clients, new clients typically score in the 3.2 to 3.9 range on a scale of 1 to 5, in that mild, moderate potential resistance zone. Talks about how strategic clarity and the case for change consistently rank highest, while transformation agility, internal comms, and operational capabilities are persistent weak spots. So this is interesting because this shows you across past clients what's the average. And so strategic clarity actually rates high for past clients. So it's one of the strongest areas, or actually the strongest rated area. And then you can see down here the weaker areas: transformation agility, operational capabilities, performance and accountability, internal comms. These are the weakest areas. And then you can see culture, strategic clarity are actually higher. That surprises me. Actually, culture, I think culture, we have a lot of clients with really strong cultures, which I would argue actually can create problems unintentionally if you have a strong culture. So that one doesn't surprise me, I suppose, because strong culture, in my opinion, can equal more resistance because you're threatening to disrupt that culture in some way, even if you don't mean to. But the strategic clarity is interesting. I actually would have thought that was lower, especially because now I would have thought it's trending downward in a negative way, because now so many organizations we work with, qualitatively at least, come to us and say, hey, we need to implement a new system because we have to get off our legacy system, which typically is not a good enough reason to do it. So it's interesting that is rated so high. So again, this could be an example where, I'm not going to throw out my opinion or disregard it, but it makes me second guess it, or maybe not second guess it, but shows me that maybe I need to validate my thinking here, because I would not have placed strategic clarity as the number one strength of our past clients. So, and in fact, as a prompt to follow up, I'd say, why is that? Why is strategic clarity rated so high? How is this, give me examples of current clients that have those high scores. On the flip side too, I'd say, let's unpack this culture thing. Is this really a positive thing? If the ratings are high, how would culture affect, or could culture affect resistance to change? So that allows me to dig in and have a conversation to unpack the data in more detail. So here it talks about the consistent strengths, consistent weaknesses, which we just talked about. It talks about the tenure effect here. So tenured employees generally rate readiness areas higher than newer employees. And one engagement showed an overall readiness score of about 3.91. Wow. Mal's strength. I'm trying to understand that. So tenured employees generally rate readiness areas higher than new employees. So maybe there's a comfort that goes with tenured employees. They assume that we're ready. Back to that point about people being comfortable with the status quo. Maybe that job satisfaction is a result of the status quo, and disrupting the status quo actually could jeopardize their job satisfaction, which might be the same thing here with tenure. The reason they've stuck around is because they like the culture, they like the way things are today, but they don't necessarily like the way things are going to be in the future. And so it's easy to mistake this as a positive thing. So that's an interesting thing. I'm learning as we go here. So thanks for unpacking this with me. Based on the benchmark, a new client entering should expect, looks like kind of mild or moderate results here. Strategic clarity is likely to be their most important or strongest area. And then it shows you the areas where they're likely to fall below. But what's cool now is we get a new client, we can actually benchmark and say, well, here's how you fall, or how you compare to other organizations, where you're strong and where you could be stronger. And it gives you some gaps. No single master benchmark document aggregating all past client ORA scores exist. It was synthesized from individual client deliverables. So, however, I know this because I did it yesterday. I can ask it to aggregate the data, and it will. It'll give me a benchmarks category by category. It'll also show me client by client how they compare against those benchmarks. So it can do it. It just didn't do it here for this response, since I didn't get into that much detail, apparently. So that is a very good question. And then there's another one that I wanted to get to. Let me try this one here. Without mentioning client names. Search knowledge base to identify recurring challenges and documented risk mitigation strategies. And schedule performance across ERP. And tools are best to mitigate risk. Okay. So I said, without mentioning client names, search the knowledge base to identify recurring challenges and documented risk mitigation strategies that impact budget performance and schedule performance across ERP implementations. What methodologies and tools are best to mitigate risk? And it's already given me a response here. Very cool stuff. Let me get it set up to show you here. Go through a couple iterations here. So that, by the way, this question is from Chris on LinkedIn. For those that are listening in without the video, Chris on LinkedIn asked the question of recurring challenges and documented risk mitigation strategies that impact budget performance and schedule performance across ERP systems or across ERP implementation. So what's cool here is that it's looking at it's not discriminating based on software vendors. So it's looking across the board. So here's the response it came back with. Variables with the strongest and most direct impact on the level of operational disruption include clarity of defined business processes. Those that spend more time defining clearer business processes experience less disruption. Level of executive alignment among key stakeholders in the transformation project team. Those that rated higher in executive stakeholder alignment and project team alignment were less likely to experience disruption. Time and effort spent during user acceptance and testing and confidence pilots, the less likely they were to experience disruption. So testing, alignment, those are all, and clearly defined business processes are all important. So the top methodologies to overcome risks across projects: independent project quality assurance. That's a service we provide at Third Stage, but having that governance, that quality assurance process in place is important. And if I didn't know any better and I hadn't done a quality assurance project before for a client, I could go in here now, ask it, how could I do a quality assurance assessment, or give me the methodology, give me the framework, give me the templates, give me the playbook for how to do this, and it's the third stage playbook. So now you can go in and pull that information of how, if I was doing it, this is how I do it. And now AI knows how I would do it and how other consultants on our team have done it. Organizational readiness assessment is number 2 way to mitigate time and cost risk. Risk register with probability and impact scoring. So not just having it, but having an accurate and objective risk register, which relates to number 4, which is canary in the coal mine, early warning indicators. I want to make sure you have that. Comprehensive testing methodology, embedded change management, and critical success factors for schedule. I'm going to read this one just because it looks like it's a catch-all for other stuff, but critical success factors for schedule include thorough upfront scoping and decision-making, avoiding delays during design and build phases, significant training investments as the new system will require changes to how people work, and expert support for vendor negotiation and contract terms. So the bottom line from its analysis here, the final consensus here is that the knowledge base consistently shows the budget and schedule failures stem from underachieving in people change, poor executive alignment, inadequate testing, and over-reliance on SIs. The most effective countermeasures are independent quality assurance, structured organizational readiness, rigorous risk registers, and embedded change management, all executed continuously rather than one-time activities. So there you go. That's how you avoid time and cost overruns. If only it were that easy. If only AI could just solve that for us. But at least we know now what it is we need to do. We may not know how yet, and that's something that, I mean, I've done it before, but if I forgot or I just want a refresher, I want to get a consolidated view of what's worked best across all of our clients, I can now prompt it to say, well, show me a quality assurance framework that would work best given this situation, this particular client situation. And it'll take our methodology, it will tailor it based on who this client is and what the nuances are of their industry and what they're trying to accomplish, which is even cooler because that saves us a lot of time from having to modify our methodologies to fit specific clients there or specific needs there. So interesting stuff. So Chris then, as a follow-up on LinkedIn, says maybe they got strategic clarity right after you arrived. I'd like to think so. So thank you for that. It could be. Michael on YouTube joins from Jakarta. Thank you for being here today. And then again, if you've got any prompts you want me to get to, I'll keep going for as long as you want, or not as long as you want, but a few more minutes, and then we'll wrap it up. But here's a question I want to get to just because it's a big one. But I'm going to say without mentioning client names, compare the top 5 SAP risks to D365 or Oracle projects. What's different and what's consistent? And I'm just going to clarify here, use search and analyze all artifacts from all accounts and file artifacts. Because we have one thing I've noticed about this tool is you have to clarify. Sometimes you have to clarify the way the tool set up is you've got your active projects set up as accounts. And so there's like 40 of them right now, or 35, I think. They're set up as accounts, and it'll search that, the current clients first. And you have to tell it to then go back to the historic files that have been loaded from before we started using this tool, back before AI existed, or before this AI tool existed. So I have to clarify, don't just look at current clients that you captured, in your tool set organically. Also look at the files that we've loaded from historic clients. So that's why I have to change the prompt to be slightly more specific. And I think I'm hoping it eventually learns and stops making me prompt it that way. But if I have to type a few extra words, that is worth the price of admission here for sure. So let me get ready to show this to you because it is spitting it out right now. And I'll learn with you on the fly here again with what AI thinks about SAP versus Oracle versus D365 in terms of the risks on those projects. And this is a good one because I imagine a lot of you are implementing one of those 3 or have experience implementing one of the 3. So I'll be curious to see if any of this resonates with you once I get the response here. It's going through cost overruns, cloud maturity. It's looking at change management and people impact of the 3 different systems. And now it is giving me a table that compares the 3 across different risk factors. So that's cool. If I needed to do a PowerPoint presentation for a client, or a client asked me in a meeting to, on the fly, give them an answer to something that I don't have in my head, I can quickly ask AI to go get that information for me. And what's cool too is, even though I started this company and I have more exposure to more projects than anyone in the company, just because I started it and I've been here from day one, I still don't know everything. I still don't know everything that we've done for different clients and all the lessons that have come with it. And this tool does make me realize how I think I know a lot, and I stand by that, but there's a lot I don't know about our existing clients, our past clients, and all that stuff. So I apologize. This one's taking a little longer than normal, but it goes through iterations and it keeps refining it based on my instructions here. And so just give it a second. Bear with me. I'm curious to hear from you all too, if any of you have been using AI, not just in terms of AI features that you might be introducing to your organization, but have you been using AI to implement new technology? I'd love to hear your experience, even if it's just using Copilot to help you create PowerPoint slides, or if it's using Claude to create some code or whatever. I'm just curious to hear if, when, and how you've started to use AI, or you've seen it to be most effective. Thanks for answering this question here, Driss on X. The first comment I think I've gotten to here from X. Driss says, built an AI agent that customizes NetSuite based on user business needs from order to cash. Very cool. I think there's going to be a lot more of that, I think, in the NetSuite space, but also other areas as well, especially as you get into, like, I know NetSuite has its platform that you can build technology on, but Salesforce and some of these other platform as a service types of solutions, I imagine that's going to be a big thing. This is the biggest response, the longest response of any so far. So talk about opening a can of worms. It is just going crazy here. And in real time on a client delivery project, this is lightning speed fast, but when you're live in front of people watching, it is super slow. And here we go. Okay, so we've got a response here. And here's what we have. Wow. Okay, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but you can see. Wow. All right, so what it does, I'm just going to walk through it. I'm not going to go through every single thing here. It gives you some of the comments it goes through, which includes. Whoops, let me just stop sharing for some reason. All right, try that again. All right, so the summary: across all third stage artifacts, the top 5 risks are remarkably consistent across ERP vendors, but each platform has distinct risk manifestations driven by its architecture, ecosystem, and typical buyer profile.